Welcome to the August rainy meeting, and I am glad to be back. I missed you all in July a little bit. Thanks for taking care of things in my absence. I think we got all the kids situated where they're supposed to go. Next time, all my 3 kids want to move in the same 6 weeks, so I'm going to have to say something. That was a little bit much. I want to remind you that on any given topic, we'd love to have your input. However, we've got a new kind of protocol we're working on and building slowly. I will take input from you all when I am satisfied that the board has had a chance to talk on any given topic, and not until then. So if you want to put your hand up, you can, but you're going to sit there with it up for a bit until I'm sure my board has had a chance to talk together. All right, that being said, first order of business is the approval of the July 23rd board meeting minutes. I have to abstain because I was not here. Lance, you as well.
I have 2 corrections. One, I already settled with Frank and James about the spelling of Frank's name, and Gary Malady is in District 3.
Any other adjustments? Okay, I'd like a motion then to approve those minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve the July board meeting minutes.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Mary Jane. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the July 23rd, 2016 minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 2 abstentions. And would you mind silencing your cell phones? Forgot that one. Okay. Next order of business is our treasurer's report. Lance?
Yeah, passing down basically kind of the updates, through July. Overall, we're doing very, very well financially as far as the Conservancy District goes. Permits, park entrance fees and stuff are all tracking very well this year. We're already about 92% of watercraft permits, as well as launch fees, and right up there as well in terms of, park reservations and stuff like that. So it looks like we're going to be basically making the budget from an income standpoint. So overall, basically in the month of July, we recognize close to about $39,000 in total income, with a good portion of that coming through the watercraft and launch permits, in addition to the park, entrance fees. Expense-wise, it was a little bit, heavy this month on expenses. Salary and wages were basically in line with what we would project for the year. But we did have, several additional expenses come into play. We had a weed treatment payment, which was about $15,000 that kind of hit in the month of July. We also had about $2,000 in equipment rental, basically when we had the small barge in and had to kind of get the crane in and stuff like that. That was charged off in the month of July as well. In addition, we paid for the fireworks in the month of July. That was an additional $6,500 payment as well. So overall, expenses, we're tracking about $59,709, and as to be expected, kind of in a non-tax month, the expenses did exceed income a little bit, so we were about $20,000 in the red for the month of July, but overall for the year, we're finishing pretty strong, at about $115,000 to the positive. Balance sheet wise, we continue to, be in very, very strong financial position. Currently, at month end, we had a little over $371,000, in the checking and related savings accounts, and in addition, we have almost $200,000 in related CDs online as well. And at this time, we currently don't have, any debt. And obviously, fixed assets went up because we did record the barge coming online this month as well. So would be open to any questions. Yes.
Did you say you were in the red for the month of July for the year?
Yes, about 20,000, which is to be expected because we rely on the tax income, and that comes twice a year.
Lance, what's the category of revenue? What was loan proceeds that dropped from $200,000 for 16 to the got this 90,000.
We'll get to that soon. That's in the, yeah, that's down. We'll, on the final discussion for the budget, so that's a couple items down on the agenda. So we'll get to that. Yeah. Any other questions on the board?
I just got 4 disbursements that I don't recognize. If I could just,
Yeah.
Atomic Electric, Building and Grounds.
They redid our electrical down by the boat lift and pump station. It was a little old and dangerous there, so we had to put in the GFI outlets and an actual big shut off. I know, yeah, we've been working on it too.
Ball Enterprises.
That's probably the fireworks mailing. They do the fireworks mailing,
Yeah,
and
the print.
passes and everything.
Okay. Okay, and then there were 2 miscellaneous things on your Visa card, 6170 miscellaneous, 25448, and then 77250 other profit secretarial.
250 was probably the food for the
Annual
picnic. I would assume.
Okay.
And what was the other, 61?
77250 other professional services and secretarial service.
That might have been the one of the trucks.
Yeah, that was 772. That was one of the barge transport trucks.
Oh, okay, good. And you said that we haven't made a barge payment. That'll probably come in August. The final barge payment.
Yeah, we just paid one this month.
That's paid off.
But it came in August, not in July.
Correct.
Last one, Roger Edwards, $1,750.
That was a tree that fell across the Bloomington Yacht Club Cove, and it actually blocked off an old cove and tried to get a few other companies out, and nobody was real keen on it.
Oh, I got it.
Working
That's
over
good.
the water,
I'm
so.
glad he got to work. He cuts my grass. I think he cuts your grass. And then McAllister, we haven't paid them in July. We paid them in August.
We paid them in on.
Okay, with that, any other questions on the vouchers? If I could have a motion to approve the vouchers as
So moved.
presented, and second.
Seconded?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And that's my report until the budget.
Thank you. All right, next up is the manager's report. Adam?
All right, small barge. We did get small barge, all connected, hydraulics there and everything. We actually got a chance to get that out this week and move around with it. Good news, holds the barge well, spuds are working, motors are working. The bad news is we can't get it above 2,000 RPMs without it cavitating, and there's absolutely zero reverse on it. And essentially it's just the water's shooting into that flat hull in the back and just neutralizing out. So what we're doing, the builders are building new motor mounting brackets. They'll be building those this next week. Once those are done, we'll be sending up a guy to weld those on. So we'll probably have to get a crane back up here to lift the butt end of that barge out. We'll have to put on the new motor mounts and mount those motors lower so we get those props lower below the hull. So that is where we were at with the barge. So hopefully we can move as quick as possible with that and get those motors moved lower. Kind of need reverse when we're out there moving. Barge operations update. We moved out 6,500 cubic yards from Point Eidolon. I was actually looking up yesterday doing some estimates, and there's probably about 3,500 yards to go. We're into the point where they have about a foot of water left. So we will be up there for, a good week. If the weather holds off, we get about 1,000 yards out. So we will have a few more weeks up there, just based on when we're looking at the GIS and guessing on the channel, it's probably about 3,500 cubic yards to move. So we'll be continuing to work on there. Next up, here's got the vegetation control update. Yes?
Where are we at on the warranty on that barge? How long have we had it, and how long is the warranty test time on that?
And there's not really warranty on it. Once it leaves the shop, it's kind of ours. But he did say since the motors are mounted so high, they're going to take responsibility for that. So they will come up and do the welding on that, move the motor brackets down. But essentially, we gave them the design to build, so it's ultimately on us.
But the reverse isn't on our tab, is it?
No, they're coming up to weld the brackets. We'll have to help with remounting the motors down a little bit lower. But as far as the mounting brackets, they're going to send somebody out and they're going to be doing the work and all that. I told them we don't have the machine or the staff time to donate Yes.
Is there gonna be an additional charge then?
Not for coming up to Wilton.
For the, just the brackets and everything are gonna be provided or
Yes, they will provide
at
those.
no charge?
So, yeah.
We'll pay for the crane and everything.
Yeah, we'll have to pay for the crane to get it out. Potentially, we might use a big excavator to pull it up on the land. Really, we have to get the butt end up on the
Right,
thing. and
I
hide
figured
it.
there was a charge of that.
Yes.
So, we've had that excavator now for about 2 months. How,
About a month and a half, yeah.
how much have we paid in rent for that so far, including the cost of the hydraulic fluid and everything?
The actual rental fees are just over 2,000. The hydraulics and everything was about 4,000 for that, so we're looking at about $6,000 was the bill that we got.
Are we gonna be able to do some dredging this year, you think?
With that, I hope so. I really hope so. It depends how long we get through Eidolon with 3,500 yards left. It's going to end up being about a 10,000 yard dig Eidolon.
Can you give us an idea of what's going on in Eidolon? We've seen several good days where we haven't seen the barge out there. Is there activity taking place in Eidolon?
Yeah.
Specifically, with Eidolon was done, because we're out a lot and we see the barge parked over there. And so we were told last week it wasn't done, so I started paying attention. And out of the last 6 business days, 4 of them were free and clear, beautiful days. That barge was out there on Thursday only. That's 75% of usable time not used.
Well, Monday and Tuesday, it was pouring and storming the entire
Wednesday,
time.
Friday,
Looking out there.
Friday.
And those days we were working on the small barge. Wednesday we did all the final connections, and yesterday we're actually raising
So
up and
Levi
looking at
is
it.
working on the small barge all that time, 4 days?
There's only 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday and Tuesday was raining.
And the previous Friday was beautiful days.
And the previous Friday, we got 40 hours in that Thursday. We were out 4 days then.
Wow, I was there every time.
Yeah.
It seems like even if it was half unusable time, I'm not understanding why with the urgency and the need and freeholders concerned and moving on, I'm not understanding why that's not cracking 100% of the time at this late point in the summer.
We've been approaching 40 hours every week. We have had breakdowns, where we've even had to replace the cylinders. I guess it was.
As badly as you want to see digging in Eidolon, there's people that want to see the small barge being built. and
Of course they do, but we were told that.
So they can only do one or the other. So if they're working on the small barge, they aren't digging. And if they're digging, they're not working on the small barge.
And last week we did replace the hydraulic lines on the excavator too, so that was about a day right there replacing the hydraulic lines. So.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Vegetation update, our last treatment was on August 10th. It was a small treatment. We treated 4.3 acres of milfoil around the lake. That totaled $2,365. That treatment also included the second application for the treatment of lotus and spatterdock, the 2 emergent plants that are common on this lake. So things are looking pretty good. I'll be out. This week will be 2 weeks after that treatment, so I'll be out to look at the few areas that we did treat and look over the lotus and spatterdock again and make sure that got a good kill. We've got a little bit of money left in the budget. I'll take another trip out, or when I go back out this week, I'll look for any other little hot spots or areas possibly in the main lake that need to be treated since we have the money for it. And we did receive $5,000 from DNR Lair, so I've submitted an early invoice for a lot of milfoil treatment, so we should be getting that $5,000. It normally takes them a couple months to get it to us, but we'll be getting that in a couple months. Question?
Yeah, I talked to a guy at Blair. I thought we were tapped out. Do they have different funds that they fund?
Different funds. We're tapped out for dredging, that kind of thing, but they always have money normally for weed treatments.
How does the flooding, did that affect it at all? Or just once you sprayed it?
Yeah, once you spray it, you're pretty much good. A lot of times it's a contact herbicide, so as long as you have like half a day or so, we did have some rain come in after our last treatment, so that's one thing I'm going to look at and make sure it didn't get washed off. But flooding really is probably going to help the weeds just because it increases the turbidity and the plants are going to grow as well in perfect water.
my question.
Okay.
So I know that last meeting, I know there was some board members that weren't here, but last meeting, there was discussion on the Lotus, and the amount of Lotus that there is this year is overwhelmingly higher. The last 2 years has been overwhelmingly higher than it has been the previous 20 years. And so I know when I talked to you, James, that you established that you're changing the line in some areas on Lotus. I want to understand how you decided where that line was going to be. And second, I want to know why the board hasn't consulted with the people that it affects. If you're going to move that line forward, the discussion is that the lily pad does help with sediment, but I'd like to see some documentation on how many acres that's going to be, how many acres of lily pad controls how much sediment. I challenge the board to show me an exact amount and prove that that line needs to be where it is.
I think we can, is it Jeff? Is that your name? Hi, Jeff. And I'm sorry I wasn't here either. I have been working hard on this all summer, as many others have been. I think we can settle your concerns. Adam, you want to address what you and I discussed yesterday about what we're thinking? You hit the nail on the head. May I just preface by saying, and I just said this to you this morning, I think the problem is there was a line originally. It was a management decision over the last 2 years to change that line. The board was not involved in that decision. That is within the management's discretion to try. It has created a lot of angst. I live down there too, and I know what you're looking at. But I also want to give Adam some credit for trying to use a little bit of a science approach on this lake. Science and happiness of lake owners don't always go together, as you well know. Having said that, I agree with you. My family and I need some quantifiable way. So you tell me, if I'm going to look at 20 more feet of lotus, what does that get me in terms of saving my lake? And I don't think we are there yet. That was my
I'm not sure how quantifiable we can provide papers and information that says that the lotus stabilizes the area that it's at. Essentially, the line that we came out, we're looking at notable areas. If it wasn't notable, then they're thinking it's good habitat and it saves us money not to spray in the area. I mean, that's part of the reason I think that spit of land and all that's come out so far in the past 20 years is because every year we wipe out the lotus, draw the lake down, and the rain just washes the sediment right in. And that's been based on managing by a number of complaints and then by input. So the lotus really does stabilize the sediment that's there, and also it benefits for nutrient uptake, E. coli, bacteria, different nutrients, and the plants use that. We have had discussion with all the active freeholders next year. We will be talking with the board and either having them based off the old line that we used to have, or to manager discussion, and that'll be a discussion to come. So
I think based on what information and education we receive, that could be renegotiated. But the current thought is to go back to the original line. I'm sure you've seen this map, at least for now, because we do not have enough information to.
Whose current thought?
Our current thought. I've been talking to Adam about it. This was not the board. The original maintenance line, Andy, was determined. It was never, the board never determined that we would go away from that. Management discretion decided that we would try it. Once again, that's fine, but we've got a lot of people who are unhappy and a lot of investigation to do, I believe, before we can change this in that
So
manner.
before we move it back, would we have a board discussion?
We don't need to, because we were never asked to change it in the first place. Does that make sense? In other words,
That's my beat, is that the line was never agreed upon as a change. It was not consulted with the freeholders.
correct.
And it was stated to me
Folks,
by
I need the side chatter to not happen. Thank you.
a board member, as I asked this, I said, hey, they said the area is not Vogel Lake, so that's really undefined, because you can kayak in that area where we're talking about, in many of the areas, not just in our area, but there's multiple people on the lake in multiple locations that are concerned about the lotus. Second, there's never been discussed or defined how much sediment the lotus does stop. And so when I asked that to some of the members here of the board, some of the employees of the board, the response was, we're at this not usable lake, which we said was kayakable, well, you can do that in the fall or the spring. which is in difference to a concern. And then I said, well, it also depreciates property value in these areas. And the comment was, I'm not concerned about the property value. And that is a concern of every freeholder in this room, because if you can make those decisions without board approval on Lotus, then what's next?
I understand.
I think we should have a board vote where if, we leave it at manager's discretion, or the board can vote to move it back to the old line. I mean, property values on the south shore, those willows now, like 50 to 100 feet of those houses, and a lot of that has been the practice of, I mean, the sediment is stabilized there from the root structures. Ideally, you want those root structures up to the channel edge, but when we wipe that all down, then if we do the drawdown, it just washes out. If we were going to move it back to the old line, we should consider not doing the drawdown, or only doing it every few years. That way we can let people know and they can do the work on top sort of thing. I'd be willing to do that, but if we continue to cut the Lotus line all the way back and continue to do drawdowns, and we're just exponentially increasing the amount of sediment that's coming in there.
I think if it's going to be this controversial, we should have it as a topic. The board should discuss it, just like the drawdown, just like dredging priorities. It shouldn't, it's become too big a deal to just have.
Sure. But it was never brought to the board for a vote. So we do not need a vote at this point. We can put it on the agenda for next time, but for now, I believe that we should be ready to go back to the original line, because we never deviated from it. Well, we're kind of done for this year.
Yeah, so we can discuss what we want to do.
We have some time. The other thing I'm confused about, and I've talked to a couple board members, I can't seem to get an answer about whether we're just killing the tops of the Lotus and the roots, or the roots. And I need more information too.
Yeah, it goes
But I've
down.
heard that sometimes it doesn't. It depends on what you use. Like, it's like the drawdown. You get 3 people that say, yeah, it's the greatest thing, 3 that say, nah, but you got to think about this. It's a complicated issue. Mary Jane, I'm sorry, interrupted.
I would agree that the board needs to have a discussion about this, but I guess we need some information in order to have that discussion. And I think that may be part of the reaction of everyone else. If there's a good reason to not move the line as far as we were saying, that's one thing, but it's really hard to make a decision when we don't have any real concrete data that would say this is good or it's bad.
Is this this Lotus discussion part of the bigger plan that we're going to be looking at?
I believe it could be.
Okay.
I believe not.
So that's until we decide to do that.
I agree. Very good point.
It's A plus B plus C kind of thing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Can I just say a word on that?
Sure.
We are looking at coming up with a comprehensive lake management plan that would handle the amount of sediment coming in and hopefully minimize that where it needs to be dredged. And we're going to try to get some real engineers to look at the overview of this thing and say, here's what you need to do, and this is how you minimize the stuff coming in. Here's where the Lotus needs to be. Here's how we built the weirs and all of that. So all of this discussion that we've been having so far is all tied together.
Right.
And hopefully it will get solved within the next year.
I'm just curious, has anybody looked at where the water's coming from, the different creeks?
Oh,
and
sure.
put up vegetation there to
Yes.
stop the sediment
Yes.
in the first place?
Yes, that's part of
All
this.
that?
that's another piece of this puzzle, as I
That
understand it. I
really works.
missed that.
Yes, that will be, I hope.
Yeah.
It's just the beginning stages, so yes, it will be, I hope.
Yes, Barb.
The original thought process for the drawdown of the lake was to give property owners a chance to work on their seawalls and everything else. And when we have those heavy spring rains, it also prevented flooding for a lot of people.
And sometimes in December, we've had that too.
No, I'm just,
But yeah.
trying to give you a little history there.
No, I know. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, before you move on, I would like to know, since several board decisions are made based on votability, I hear you talking about whether it's a votable area.
Oh, votable, okay.
Board decisions are made based on whether something is votable. Could you tell me what that means? Is that ski boats, pontoons, paddleboards? What is votable?
Normally with vegetation treatments, we try to keep access open. So dock access, channel access, and the main lake.
So if it's not ski boatable, you have the right I understand what you're saying is then to make a decision to change all other aspects of votability.
Well, I mean, if it's behind the shallow area buoy line, then, I would consider that minimally votable. So it'd be lower on my priority list,
So votable is inboard, outboard ski boat, not pontoon, jet ski, kayak.
Dock access, channel access, I mean, if you've got 2 feet of water, unless you're in the channel and you're, getting or something, I don't consider that a very highly votable area, no.
So kind of a no-wake zone is what you're looking at, an area that's no wake. You don't, kind of.
It depends on where you're
Yeah,
at.
that's true too.
The problem with this discussion though is a couple of years ago, there was talk about not having any boats back at that last bay back there. This conservative district was created in the establishing documents to maintain the lake. That there was a set number of acres in the lake. So your conversation, well, if there's only 2 feet of water, it's not votable. There's only 2 feet of water because the board over the past 20 years has not done what the mandates say you're supposed to do to maintain the lake. So what used to be 5 feet or 6 feet or 8 feet of water at our end is now 2 feet. So you're not fulfilling your obligations to make that statement and let it become 2 feet to then say it's not votable because you're not fulfilling the charter. So the question really boils down to when are we going to have this discussion? We were told at the spring meeting that there was going to be a catch basin down at Paula Baker's place. And then rumor had it
There was a
that
discussion that we would have that. We did not vote to have the catch basin down there. We're still trying to, this whole new plan we're trying to look at is much, much more comprehensive than anything we've got coming up. And we're having to reinvent the wheel. This lake is filling in quicker than anybody wants it to, and we're dredging as fast as we can dredge, and it's not really keeping up with it. So we're trying to figure out a different way, a much 21st century way of trying to deal with this. But it's going to be a long-term plan. It's not going to fix things in the next 6 months or even probably the next 5 years.
So my question is, looking at the budget for next year then, with all these plans that I think are good, that we have a board that's being more, trying to be more proactive and foresightful than perhaps the boards in the past have been, is it seems to me we ought to be expanding our budget and having more in funds to do these sort of things as opposed to minimizing.
That's also in the discussion.
That's coming.
Yeah, and I think that's going to come up, and the reality is, you look back, we got a lot of data right now. The bathymetric study basically tells us that the soft sediment over the last 10 years has increased 9.7%. It's also told us that the lake, the 15-foot depth areas of the lake have decreased, 3.5%. So we know we got a whole lot of data coming in telling us what's going on sediment-wise. I think the next step is, how do we handle it and how best to address it and what the priorities need to be. And that's some discussions that I think are forthcoming. But the main issue at the end of the day is we got a budget of this and we got needs of this. And so we got to figure out the best way, to work within the parameters that we have and be as open as we can as far as, what the needs are going to be going forward. So.
My name's David Mertz. I live on Point Idlehouse Drive. I've been here 16 years now. One of my concerns is in the last 10 years, the amount of money we put towards a sediment removal program. We were throwing $125,000 at this a year or something. In that amount of time, we could have properly done a wet dredge probably for about half of that cost. And if we keep going with just this minimal Band-Aid approach, I agree, you've got a daunting task in front of you, but obviously it's getting critical and something's got to be done for that long-term prosperity. The amount of money that we're throwing at this and we're not getting anywhere is really getting frustrated on our end.
Sure, I understand.
But just...
When you say wet dredge, David, do you mean hydraulic dredge?
Right.
Okay, thank you, different term. Yes, Gail.
So I've been here 32 years, and I've come to meetings ever since the Conservancy. And it wasn't that we didn't do a wet dredge. We tried like hell to do a wet dredge, and there were so many factors back then that blocked us. And we had a big committee, and we worked on it for 2 years, and the board worked on it. The board is a volunteer group of people. Nobody up there is paid. They put endless hours in. No animosity should be shown towards them. Everybody's had their hearts in this lake and have tried, and frustrating me to hear people that are newer to come and make statements about past things without having been there and seeing people. And to say that past boards didn't work hard enough. I saw them working their butts off and putting in lots of extra time.
Nobody's saying that passports didn't work hard.
No one said that.
Well, I didn't hear it exactly like that, but
I think there's new technology.
things have changed. Things have changed.
Things
So
are
that's why
changing.
we're.
So we did try that in the past, and there could be new work
Right,
now, but
right.
we tried every way possible. We had all the consultants, we had the government in it, everybody.
We're really looking at trying to find a method that is much more efficient than what we're doing right now, but everything points to it costing us more money, and that's a reality, unfortunately.
I got something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I go?
Could you guys hold the side chatter, please? Thanks. Could you hold this? Okay.
Here's a quick reality that fits into most of these topics we deal with. We can't make everyone happy. We don't have the money. We can't spray all the weeds. We can't dig the entire lake 100 feet deep. We can't remove every tree as soon as it hits the water. We cannot do everything immediately to make everyone instantly happy, okay? That's just how it goes. It's not realistic. We have to prioritize this. Everyone is concerned about their part of the lake. I understand why. We're concerned about the whole lake. We can't fix all of it at the same time immediately. So please understand that with your concerns. Everyone has concerns all across the entire lake. If someone would like to make a $60 or $70 million donation, we could really speed all this up if anyone would like to get their checkbook out. Until then, we're working as hard as we can.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate that. Okay, where are we?
I don't think anybody was criticizing anybody, from what I heard. I think everybody's just getting their ideas.
Sure. And that's what we do.
You'll know your volunteers.
Yeah, no.
Well,
Well,
take it to heart. This
we're all
is
frustrated.
totally
Thank you.
understood.
The other thing
Like
is.
you said, technology does exist. And I
Yeah.
believe vegetation
Yeah.
is the way to go. Because I've seen it work in other places where they put vegetation up the creeks, coming into the lakes, and it stops the sediment from coming in. So there's something to go there. I mean,
But
that's
key word
awesome.
there, up the creek, so that Mrs. Gentry's not looking at it, and Jeff's not looking at it, et cetera. So this is where we do need more of a plan, in my opinion. But the other thing is, guys, and I think this a lot when I'm lying awake at night, this is a man-made lake. Adam told me the number one sentence they told them in their limnology class, the natural fate of all man-made lakes is siltation. Isn't that the first thing they told you in your lecture, in your lake class? So we're fighting a battle that none of us, I mean, it just is what it is. So it's not anyone's fault. Nobody likes it, but we got to keep working on it. We got to be a team. I believe that everybody in this room together is better than any one of us. And that's not an original quote, some politician said it. But I really do believe that. I really do. And so let's keep at it and let's chip away.
And I think, we're really going through kind of a natural cycle here. This is very familiar to what I think occurred 10 years ago when they had the first bathymetric study done, and they kind of went through it and prioritized and tried to figure out the best way at that time to do it. And, they did what they did. So we're kind of going through that cycle again. And it's interesting how things do change. I remember our retreatment when we had the big monster, orange monster coming out, because that was the way to treat the weeds, is to cut them down. And then eventually we figured out that we were actually making the problem worse because we were spreading all the seedlings around. So, it's just an evolving process, and I think, we're at the point as a board that, we're all going to kind of take our breath, take a look at the information we have and try to come up with the best solutions to
We want to bring
fix it.
experts in.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
not experts. Most of us are dumb as dirt when it comes, I'm speaking of me. When it comes to this, and I am a new person, and I'm sitting on the deep end of the lake with all the luxury in the world, and, but we wanted to be on this lake because this lake is a beautiful lake. All of it's a beautiful lake. So what we need is experts. We're trying to get us to that point where we are not the decision makers, that somebody who knows really what they're doing, at least in 2016 or 2017, can make some decisions for us.
Do we get IU involved in this? University?
We can talk about that. I'm going to get to you because you've had your hand up forever.
Yeah, she has that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ladies first. Ladies first.
Oh,
Sure.
I'm just wondering, how much leverage as a freeholder do we have for maintaining our own space? Instead of asking you guys to come, you know, I understand some of it is beyond my control, but if I can go out there and I can
Dig your own dirt out?
I mean that, or if I can, you know, I know people have run chains along, you know, just kind of raked it. I mean, is there any discretion that me as a freeholder has to do some of that, to keep my little, because I mean, grassroots effort is always a good idea. So I don't all the blame on when y'all can fix it. I mean, we need that work, but what can we do? I mean, do I have any leeway to go in and start hacking down some stuff that's blocking my area, or making, I can tell it's worse, the vegetation is growing up, it's getting closer and closer, and it's stuff that you can't get to, and I understand that, but can I go out there and do that?
Yeah, as a freeholder, you're allowed to treat, you have to put in a permit, you know, tell us kind of what you're putting into the lake. But you're allowed to treat 625 square feet without an applicator's license. So as long
What if I
as,
wasn't chemically treating it? What if I was just going out there cutting away or?
You want to take a weed rake out there and
I mean,
pull 'em
seriously,
up?
like, I'm being completely serious. I can do that at my discretion for the length of my seawall?
We have weed breaks and stuff too that we loan out, the big sickles that you kind of throw out.
That's what I was gonna say, because I mean, I want people to be aware that it's not all, what are you gonna do, I mean, some of it's, we have to take care of our own stuff, and if we start doing that, it may not be such an issue, all I'm saying. So I didn't know if I had leverage, or if I'm gonna get in trouble because a tree that's growing up there that wasn't there 10 years ago came down.
Sounds
I'm sure somebody's got waiters they can loan you.
But you do need.
I didn't think I need waiters where I'm good. I just.
Sherry, in all seriousness, you would need to check with the, with.
That's what I'm saying, so I just go to the office and
Go
say,
and
hey,
say, here's
something
my
about me,
problem.
you let me know if I need a permit
Yeah.
or whatever I need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
We have done that. The chemicals, if you want to use them, are expensive, but we've gotten a permit to treat what does get
I'm thinking
missed.
more just manual labor.
And I've got, yeah, but find out if what you're doing is making it worse. That would be
Right,
my
so
first-
say, if I come in and talk to y'all and say, this is what I want to do, that's all I need to do.
They'll tell
And
you.
anybody could do that and say,
Exactly.
if I have a Lotus issue and I really want to deal with it myself, I could.
And how nice to have someone saying, what can I do? This is great. Appreciate that very much.
Now you've got it. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Last month I gave a presentation on the desire to have a long-term management plan. We talked about comprehensive plan, all the same kinds of terms, all the same idea. We know where we were, we know where we are today. The frustration of everyone is the board doesn't have the resource of a planning committee to work with engineers that the group could hire, the board could hire, and assist the board into creating a long-term plan. Can we have the board, you've hinted on there's discussions, movement, those kind of things. Can we have a 3-minute, 5-minute discussion on what your intent, what your desires, what action you think you're gonna do over the next month, over the next 9 months, so that when we start the spring 2017 season, we would understand that there would be the intent of trying to be much better than where we are through the 2016 voting season.
Lance?
Frank, Mike has scheduled, Mike, do you want to answer this for next
Yes,
weekend?
I've been biting my tongue here for quite some time.
I'm so proud.
I'm sure everybody's looked at the lease or the district plan. The last update was 1998. There's approximately 6 things in there to make sure the dam is functional, make sure we do water testing, make sure everyone has access to their property, maintain property values, do weed control, and maintain this park. I think we're only doing 2 out of those 4 things. And every time I have a pre-meeting, somebody says something about lawsuit. It's not if we're going to be sued, it's when we're going to be sued. And so I think we need to tell management that the weeds are a priority and it needs to go back to the management line. We need to tell management he needs to have a backup operator, excavator operator. When Levi's working on the small barge and he is one hell of a mechanic and one hell of an excavator, when he's busy, we need a backup. That's why these people are not seeing the barge on the water, because he's doing something else. It's so simple. We have the money. I got the okay from Lance. We need to tell management, get a backup operator. Not asking for a second crew. Get it back. When the gate attendant's not here, we close the park. I mean, we get a backup gate attendant. So why don't we have a backup push boat operator? We don't have a backup operator. We have the money as well. So next Saturday in this building at 10 a.m., we're having a dredging study group committee meeting based on findings that my friend Malcolm came to me on Grand Lakes, Ohio. Myself, Ron Thrasher, went out there for a whole day trip. What we saw was phenomenal. They are 10 years ahead of us, folks. And what you'll see next Saturday here, about 10:30, dredging study group meeting starts at 10. The presentation from KCI Technologies, we haven't promised them a thing. They're coming here to make a presentation as an engineering study, what they did in Grand Lakes. Malcolm's also been in touch with another engineering firm. Frank, you're absolutely right. You and I talk a lot. And I want you to be on that committee, I hope, when we do establish this engineering. I mean, you've got the expertise.
Can you be here next Saturday? To answer your, could we have a 3 to 5 minute discussion? I thought that was the 27th need to be out there.
My long-term comment, though, is we're doing all great things, but the group doesn't know it.
Right. Okay, we're trying.
And second, I think you as a resource, as a board, you all volunteer your time. That's all understood. But taking others who would be future board members, or who would be future assistants, who would be future lake tools to get assistance of work done. You know, I go out in my canoe with my machete and hack off the heads of the plants so they can't pollinate. So it's all those kind of things that can be done. But we don't know the actions because it hasn't been discussed publicly. But you need also resources of other staff, be it project teams or task groups or whatever you want to call them, and outside engineers and expertise to help you develop plans to help all of us do like, and that's all we want to hear. We all know where we were for 20 years. We all know where we are today. We're all frustrated that that has changed. We all just want to see positive action. And we know you're doing it, but we just haven't heard it.
Next Saturday. In addition, I'm going to end with this.
Folks,
maintaining property values. Online, in.gov/DLGF, Brown County property values have dropped $6 million. Now, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand that we're not maintaining 4 areas of the district plan. Okay? We've got access channels not being dug, we've got weed control not taking effect, and property values. And then, of course, Riddle Point Park. So, you know, Greg Bowman put it right out in front of us when we talked about private money and public money on private land. He put it right out in front of us. Here, it's in the district plan and it's in the Conservancy Act. We're not following those things, folks. We're not following them. Section 20, Chapter 5, Section 20 lists 10 things that we should be doing. We're probably doing one of them. So we really got to take a long look at that. And instead of coming here every month and going through the motions and not doing anything, we've got to act.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Okay, one, property values. Pretty sure we need to look at the whole lake. That's what, you know, not just Brown County, so keep that in mind. Two, hiring a second crew. I think the board needs to weigh in on that.
Not a second crew.
Even a second operator. If we're going to create another position, the board needs to weigh in on that. So I think we need to make that a discussion. If we're going to have, we don't have a wage picked for a second operator, we don't have a schedule.
The problem we ran into, we have a lot of people that would love to be back. If we could get a backup bush road operator in a heartbeat, but it's tough finding a skilled excavator operator that can come out and work on a whim, potentially 1 to 2 days a week, if that.
Someone in this room will find you one if you can't.
Yeah.
We need to find one and you can't, and then the board decides that's what they want to do.
Find a retired operator that will be able to come out, that we can call up on, that'd be great.
First, we need to create the position, which we have not done before. You know, we don't just hire someone for a position we don't have. We have to decide what the position is.
Can I ask Lance to weigh in on that? Because when we created Levi's dredging position, how was that done?
Well, the budget basically
So
is
the budget
driven
is-
by the number of hours.
Right.
So,
But
I
it's-
mean, that's kind of what you would have to go by.
So we have to know how many hours we need the guy for, then we can determine amount of money that we'd be willing to pay, and then we figure out how we're
Well,
gonna pay for it, and that kind
yeah,
of,
when you budget by hours.
right.
Yeah.
It looks like you've got 2,200 hours in here. How many hours have we utilized this current season on our treasure?
We have about 300 hours left for our project.
Spencer.
What's the point of hiring another person when the limitation is money every year? So you get it done 2 days earlier and you run out of money, what difference does that make? Every year we have more time to dredge, but we don't have any more money.
Some years we run out of water, though, so.
But, you know, I don't see anybody
Not today.
working out here in, you know, okay, say we don't draw down. There's no way out here working in the winter when there's no ice. And don't tell me it's too cold. I worked 300 miles north yard circle outside for 5 years. You can work outside the cold. It's not time. It's not, it's money. We run out of money. We've got money to run this many days. We've got time to run this many days. If you add another person, you just reduce the time. Why are we talking about this?
Because we had a board discussion in May, and we had approximately 39,000 roll over into this year, and we were going to reappropriate that when we ran out of money. And we had that discussion as a board. So we do have money this year
But you still got time too, so. But you still got to run out of money before you run out of time.
But you don't know about weather or water, so if you've got 3 days worth of good weather and we're not operating the barge, that's wrong.
And water is a factor. I mean, we sat here, Adam sat here last September, we were just discussing this and had to say, sorry, we can't get to you, Point Idleon, because we don't have any water. We had money left.
Well,
it's not always that way, but it's another factor.
The first year you ran out of time, then, because every year.
I don't remember many others, I'll give you that, but it is part of the puzzle.
Roger Duke.
Oh, sorry. Can I ask, I thought that the board, and I don't know if this is even actual now, I thought the board was also allowing private dredging when we ran out of funding as a budget to actually provide funds and to help make like deeper in areas that people want to pay private. Is that still?
We don't collect funds, we don't profit.
We don't profit.
It's cost neutral. So there's
But
no,
it's
but
still
there's
taking money out of the
budget.
lake. Still taking money out of the lake, so does that time period then, if we had both barges going, would there not be availability for both barges then to pull out more dirt if we had a second operator and it was privately funded?
Well, the two buyers, I think that's ideally what we do, is that one doing LLC dredging and one doing private dredging. We got private dredging lists of years long. I mean, there's tons of people.
Why aren't we looking at the second operator to do that too?
Because we don't have a barge that works yet.
I understand that. I think we're all
Okay, Mike, have we gotten through this?
No, because I think there's still, when the lead excavator is doing something else, when he can't come, he got hurt this year. He got hurt this year and barge sagged, and it was perfectly functional. He got hurt, it sagged. We need a backup guy, we need to explain the management. That's what we need. We paid Levi $35 an hour back in 2014. We're paying him $38 an hour now. Roger, you're an excavator. $35 an hour, is that acceptable? That hold out? I mean, and you're an experienced operator. So I recommend to the board that we tell management to get an experienced backup operator, get him trained by Levi, and have him available so when Levi can't come to work. I'll make that as a motion.
And will we also need to move that?
I would think we want to have a little more discussion about
You
it.
can have a discussion after the motion is made and seconded.
That's true. All right, are you making a motion, Mike?
I just did, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
let me restate the motion. You are asking the board to consider hiring and training a backup crew, once again.
Backup second operator.
Just one guy.
Excavator
Backup,
operator.
one guy, okay, got changed. I lost you there.
This motion doesn't depict any wages or anything?
$35 an hour. He gets workman's comp.
Why would we take?
And why are we discussing when I've made a motion? I got a motion.
I'm asking questions about
I'm
the
sorry.
motion.
The discussion is.
You're out of order, and so this whole goddamn meeting. You know what?
Todd, you're out. You're out.
You're supposed to be talking about weed control right now.
Okay.
You got off the subject. I've been sitting over here for half an hour waiting to have my turn.
Todd.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely wrong.
Todd.
And when you learn it, I'm leaving.
I'm gonna let you excuse
Yes.
yourself.
But you are wrong, and you are not going
Go.
We can have a discussion, sir.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Let me say one thing. In my public access law book, and you can all read it, I've got it in my briefcase, it's highlighted. We don't have to, by law, allow any of our public to speak at these meetings. We don't have to have a public comment. We don't have to allow you to talk on point. But as I said earlier, I believe in a team. And as long as we could do that politely, we'll do it. And I expect the same kind of courtesy out of the board members as I expect out of the public. We need to treat each other with respect and manners. And if we can't do it, I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll get absolutely less done than nothing. So I'm tired of it. I really am. And I think we should start over. Mike, you make a valid point about the backup operator.
Make your motion.
He's made a motion. I need a second. I need a second on the motion. Why don't you restate your motion, please?
I consulted with my friend Roger Duke, who's been an experienced excavator operator for many, many years. I asked him if $35 an hour was a good startup fee for a second operator. He agreed. So that was my motion, that the board have management hire a backup excavator operator, part-time. We get the same benefits that the lead excavator operator get. That is my motion.
I will second that motion.
And we don't discuss it anymore.
Now we are going to discuss it. It has been moved and seconded, and we are going to have the board talk first. Malcolm, I'll get to you, I promise. Anybody on this board that wants to weigh in on this, have at it. And be brief. And be brief. Semi-brief.
I'll be as brief as I can. I think that this whole discussion points out the need for this board to plan better together. It's very, very difficult to come to these meetings and get blindsided about things that aren't on the agenda, that just come up in discussion, and then it feels like knee-jerk reaction. I don't think in principle there's anybody in this room that would disagree that we need to do a better job of dredging. But I also would hope there's nobody in this room that doesn't understand all the issues that play into being able to be successful. It feels in this moment a little bit like we're being pushed to do something that the board itself has not really had an opportunity to consider.
That's why we're having a discussion.
With management and with information that would say, you know, it's great to say, let's hire another person. How much more are they going to get done? Given weather, given equipment breakdowns, all these things, how much more are they going to get done? Should we budget money for somebody to do this? Probably. But I don't know that we need to make a motion in this moment that we're going to go out and hire somebody in the next week.
We can discuss it. If we are not ready to move on it, we can always table it.
Okay. Or we can vote.
I think this feels very, very seat of the pants, not well planned at all. Also, in construction, it's offensive if if you're an 8 years experience dredging on this lake and you're running a larger machine, someone with no experience on the lake is hired in at the exact same wage. You don't do that. You know, we wouldn't hire an electrician in and pay him what we've paid someone that's been at Maxwell 30 years. You factor all that in. So that's, as far as picking a wage, we haven't talked about that. That could be a huge problem. You know, that's you don't just give someone the same. It would be the same in any position. You know, if you were a nurse, if you were a nurse for 40 years and they hired someone fresh out of nursing school and they paid.
I get that.
Yeah, that's not what we do. So I don't feel this motion is in the right time frame without more discussion.
Is this something that the budget committee needs to talk about?
Well, it'd probably have to come twofold. I think, there would have to, be a recommendation, and then that we could act upon that to see about how best to do it. It's something I think we need to look into, because I think if you look at the Lake Lemon Conservancy District, Levi's probably one of the most valuable players. If he goes out tomorrow and gets hit, by a bus, we got a major problem. We're sitting here arguing about dredging.
Well,
there won't be any dredging.
He farms in the fall, so when because he's a farmer, he's also gone, which is, to me, always seems to be a problem.
So I think, I think there's merit to have that discussion, but I would kind of agree that there's probably some study that we need to do in terms of looking into it, seeing what's available, and kind of coming in to having an agenda item so that we could all, discuss it.
Yeah.
Management has people on deck for these positions.
Yeah, the problem is, I mean, they all have other jobs, so if it's, you know, Monday through Thursday, they said they could come in, but we've been using 40 hours since we haven't had a need for them, really bring them in. But if it's a Tuesday and Levi's sick or gets hurt, they all have, you know, weekday jobs, so they can't just call in and say, so we'd have to find somebody that's retired, that's an experienced operator that on the whim, and they're like, yes, I can come into that.
That's not what was told to me on Friday when I had a meeting with James, that you guys had 2 guys on board, but they did not have lake experience. And so I said, well, let's get him lake experience. I'm sure that Lance would agree that we got to get him experience. I'd be more than happy to agree to get the guy experience, or the gal, whoever's out there. So these people in the back of the room said that there were 3 good days of weather and water, and there was no barge out on the water because Levi obviously was working on a small barge. I'm good with that. But then the backup guy could be operating the large barge. I don't understand what's so difficult about this.
I think we're in agreement that we need this, but I don't think we're ready to actually move on it.
But if we wait, it's another season.
I know, I
where
totally
we don't
agree.
have-
I
And
don't know.
something,
Yeah.
just say Levi does, get hurt tomorrow, God forbid, then we are sitting here with plenty of hours left. I guess studying and waiting, I understand not knee jerking, I really do, but we're in the middle of dredging season or toward the last quarter of it.
But can we get?
I think first we would decide what the position and wages are of the position. You create the position, you know, the outline of it, and then we go find someone to fill it. We don't find someone and then create a position. That's backwards.
Okay, maybe this is splitting hairs, but could we say we're gonna find someone on a temporary basis and make a decision as part of our budgeting process for the next year about actually creating that position? You're right, but if we bring somebody temporarily, that's different. You haven't created a permanent position.
But then you would pay them what you're paying someone that's.
Well, I don't know that I would pay them $35 an hour, but you're gonna pay what, you know, the market's gonna tell you what you're gonna pay.
I think that's where we would need to set a wage and create the position first.
But
That's the discussion that needs to be had, I believe.
Adam, how many gate attendants do we have?
3.
We have in the budget 1 gate attendant, but we have 3 gate attendants. We have in the budget 1 dredger other, 1 assistant dredger, an assistant dredger other, a dredger private, and an assistant dredger private. We have more dredger line items than we do a gate attendant, yet we have 3 gate attendants.
We use 1 person for all those positions.
But he's not always here. They're talking.
But we're still in board discussion.
I'll get to
All
that,
right,
I promise.
because I can't wait.
I don't know what else to do, board. It's so simple. We should have a backup operator in the event that, now, and Sue even said, he's gonna be harvesting soon. That means he's gonna be gone a week or more to harvest his land, and the barge is gonna sit when we've got 2,000 more yards to dig in Possum Trot, not to mention, how long is it gonna take to put the turbidity curtain up? Do we have anchor points for the turbidity curtain? Has the turbidity curtain been ordered?
Yes.
It has been, let's get on, let's do that in another
Could
second.
I ask one other thing?
Yes.
I'd like to hear from Adam on this topic. He's the person that will manage this operation.
That's an excellent point. Adam?
Should we have
We should
someone
have a
right
backup.
now?
One problem we run into is we offer people a job, we don't know how to work them. We need to find somebody that's retired, that doesn't have another day job. To the backup operator, they may work, 1 day, 1 week, they may not work at all for 2 to 3 weeks, so they can't be relying on this. So we need somebody that's either retired, or is self-employed, and can just kind of drop on the ball and come in.
Do you know any sources for people like that?
Well, we can continue looking.
How are you doing? Have you run an ad, have you posted?
Hold on. If we aren't gonna let Ron speak, right, we can't.
Right, you're right.
We're still at that.
Sorry, I apologize.
Let's regroup. We have a motion on the table.
Been seconded.
It has been seconded
Yeah, I mean,
to,
basically the budget. I'm okay with continuing discussion.
I want to, first of all, support Adam. I have the same trouble with the barge crew. My barge doesn't run 5 days a week, nor does it run an 8-hour day, nor does it even run in the middle of the summer. I can't find anybody that'll work for me. I have to rely on a real hodgepodge of resources. It's frustrating, and Adam is in the thick of it. Secondly, it seems to me like Adam always has the opportunity to add crew under these umbrella terms, dredger other, or dredger whatever. We don't have Levi's name under those. We just have Levi, and if Adam needs or has the opportunity to hire someone else, he can do it at any point.
Doesn't need our permission.
that's an excellent point. You know, that is an excellent point.
All I'm asking is that we
That we do it.
advise him to
Okay.
seriously consider getting that done as soon as possible. And if it takes a motion to do that, if it just takes the chair to do that, I'm okay, but it needs to happen.
What is the will of the board on this?
I think
I think
we should explore it.
I think that's a better way to go.
I do too.
I think we need to recognize that the board is responsible and accountable for some things, but management needs to be able to manage the lake. And that's a really good point.
And I'd like to put a time frame on it.
Okay. You already, if we don't have Levi's name plugged in.
No, we can hire under the terms.
Then I think it's management's decision to find somebody.
I still think if we're creating another position, it comes with a different pay rate that reflects lake experience.
Well,
I
and
entitled to your opinion. I mean, it's two different opinions.
Okay, just state my opinion.
I don't disagree with you.
Mike, hang on. Mary Jane, please. Andy, Mike, Mary Jane is finishing.
I don't disagree with you, Andy. I think, again, you hire based on someone's experience and knowledge, and that's a management decision. So if Adam finds somebody who's worth $35 or $37 an hour, that's who we should hire. If it's somebody more junior, then maybe he doesn't get that much. So I think we need to leave that flexibility with management to make that decision.
I agree totally with that. Can you live with that, Mike?
I'm perfect. Yeah.
Adam, can you live with that?
I think we're not going to get a time frame.
Okay, you'd like a time frame. Can you help us with that? Are we going to be able to accomplish this? You've got people on deck, you've got people in the back of the room saying that they'll help you if you can't find someone.
Yeah, if we get help finding someone,
Yeah.
and Adam on deck, but they can't.
The hands that went up when see Adam after the meeting and
Yeah,
tell
we
him
can hire
how
someone
we're
who can't
going.
guarantee hours, it's got someone that's not relying on this position, because they may work 1 day a month, and they work 3 days a month.
Okay, I promised you, Ron. Are you?
I'd like to point out that he said 35 and Levi gets 38. Am I correct with that?
Yes, from an experienced operator.
So it is a different wage than what our existing operator was getting is what his motion was. $38 is a union wage. We are right there at a union wage. There's union halls. An excavator operator, I know there's not a lot of them out there that dig off of a barge, but they can quickly learn that. You've got to have, and we're not making another crew. We're not spending any more money. It's a backup. That's all it is. And there should be a backup to the backup. We should not have all our eggs in one basket. There is no one
And I agree.
that operates a business, unless you're just a sole proprietor and general contractor, that you are the guy. Your business, electrician, you don't shut down if you don't show up for work. Do they?
Pretty close, yeah.
Pretty bad. You understand what I'm saying? We're talking about a backup, and you should have a list of people that you could call. And there are plenty of retired people, even the full-time people. If you give them a 2 weeks notice, a week notice, they can take a vacation day. There's people that will do that.
That's a problem.
They're union hall. There's options out there. And we should not. And I want to go back to the hours, and I'm sorry, but when you say we're running 40 hours, that's not correct. We only went over 30 hours, 3 times this year. 30 for dredging.
Yeah, do you have the maintenance hours and stuff on those?
We're talking dredging, where you get me on dredging. Okay? 39 hours was the closest we got. 2 other ones were at 31 hours a week. There are days, if we had a backup, they could be digging in the prime season. We've been lucky this year. The water level has stayed up. Last year, and we've run into this in years past, where the water level gets down, and we just stop. If Levi is hurt, he was hurt in May. So there was a whole week gone. Get a backup, and a backup to the backup. That's all we're talking about, not a second crew. We're not increasing the budget.
Good clarification. Malcolm, you've been waiting. Thank you, Ron.
I realize that this is a nonprofit organization, okay? But may I suggest this, at least, and get it out on the table? Why don't we've got 2 barges, why don't we use one of them to do private barge dredging, let people pay for that at more than cost. In other words, they're actually making money, that goes back into the dredging budget to cover the other side. That way, if private dredging gets done, which it isn't right now, we've got a 5-year backup on that, and we have 2 crews, and the whole thing's covered. Wouldn't that be a good solution?
I don't know if you listen to the barge report, we have 1 barge right now. Just
Well, I understand we have 1 right now, but maybe as soon as next week.
I hear you. And that was a big topic some years back prior to your time, and I can talk to you a little bit about how that evolved and.
But could that be done? I mean.
That's what we talked about, and dump site issues. There are lots of things that go into that, and I'd be happy to meet with you on it because I was.
Yeah, and there's some budgetary things too. The way the state works is kind of quirky. Even if you have
We're
the.
not quite a 501(c)(3) yet.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
We're too far away from Mike made a motion that was seconded, so we do need to stay on that.
If I can get Adam to tell me when he thinks he can get a backup operator, give me a time frame, I will withdraw my motion.
And
I
then
can
we'll
find
go.
somebody. I can't say in 1 week I'll have somebody that says, yes, I can work when you need me to, and we can't give it 2 weeks notice. I mean, if Levi gets hurt, or that's the day that he can't come in, it's gonna be a 24, 48-hour notice.
What about number 3?
It's hard to put a time frame on something like, I mean, you can, someone
can
can
we
walk in the door
Okay,
tomorrow.
excuse me, could I make another suggestion that we have a new motion? And that it's that management will, in a reasonable time frame, find and engage.
I will amend to that.
Okay.
All right,
Then
find and
we-
engage a backup operator for dredging.
Within a reasonable time frame.
And
then I-
management will pick a wage based on how they feel about the experience.
Yes.
Would you love to that? Then?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
So you are making that motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
She'd like to make.
Well, we have.
They have.
So does Mike have to withdraw his original motion?
Yes.
Or make the amendment, I'm
Or
okay
make
with
the
the
amendment?
Okay.
Mike can-
Now I need a second on the
Wait,
amendment.
can we get the amendment spelled all the way out? We are supposed to be really clear about these.
Okay.
So,
And I know I'm
Mike, you want
supposed
me
to tell you that, I'm
words
gonna let
in
you
your
know.
mouth?
Go ahead.
You start, you finish.
Mike
Somebody-
Blackwell is making a motion that we direct management in a reasonable time frame to find and engage a backup operator for dredging.
In a reasonable time frame, is that?
I said,
the wage part.
and, oh, I'm sorry, at a reasonable wage. I think we
That's my
gotta leave that one
motion.
open.
That's my motion.
Okay, perfect.
I will second that motion.
Okay.
Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have
Motion
one more
carries.
thought that came up when Ron spoke. I'm just curious. When Levi is working on the excavator, is he taking dredges out, dredges pay?
No, it comes out of the other. Well, the pay rate's the same.
He's $38 an hour?
Pay rate's the same, yeah.
So
But
he
it
gets
comes out of the other.
$38 an hour to work on the dredger.
Yes.
He gets $38 an hour to work on the small barge.
Yes.
Okay. What does Lee Keene charge us per hour?
It's like 50 something.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We really need to get to your budget.
You need to get to the budget.
Can we talk about the budget
As it kind of been mentioned, basically today is the last hearing on the budget, so I'll take a few moments and probably go through each grouping, certainly explain, everything that's been done, and certainly open it up for question as we go through, because the next hearing is going to be the public hearing, and once it goes into there, it's basically locked in for the year. Basically on the income side, for the most part, a lot of the income coming in is anticipated to be the same. We are anticipating a little bit of an increase, in the watercraft permits and such, based on what we've been trending on this year. Property tax, the levy will remain the same. We've got the levy set at $250,000 for next year. That's similar to what this year is. Obviously, assessed values are going to play into that, so I can't guarantee that everybody's tax rate will remain the same. Grants and donations, fishing tournaments, and all such, we anticipate to be the same, in addition to park reservations. We are budgeting a little bit of an increase in dredging and riprap income. Again, as you heard, we do have kind of a lineup of some people wanting to get some jobs done there. And then there has been some questions, I know, regarding the dredging equipment and loan proceeds. But that's going down from $200,000 to $900,000. Primarily, that's because of our $90,000. Excuse me. Yeah, we got income coming on all over the place, but basically, that's the main reason for that is that's the small barge operation. Obviously, that's been purchased this year. The only thing we're anticipating next year is the excavator, and so we did a lot for that. The way the state works is even though it's quote-unquote a loan, not so much income, we do have to treat it as income for budgeting purposes. So that's why there's a decrease there, is we just don't have the anticipation of having the loan proceeds or having the need on that. So with the income side, I'll open it up maybe real quickly to questions on the board. Any questions on any of that?
Oh, dear God, no.
No.
Sure. At the last meeting, when we had the presentation from Frank in the public comment period, I got in trouble with some people because I said if we were going to undertake that kind of a project, that we would need to do financial planning around that. And one thing I would say is I see nothing here that would budget money toward paying for any of the consultants we might hire or that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if we need to make a provision for that.
We can't. That's a tough question. It's kind of the chicken or the egg question, because although I think there's a lot of discussions on what that is, we don't really know what the expense is going to be yet or whatnot. So it's hard to put kind of something in the budget that we really don't know.
Until we have a contract, we don't know how much it's
We don't know
gonna
how
cost us.
much. The way that you could kind of approach that as we come in, and I think it's a lot better from a transparency standpoint, is have an additional appropriation. So once we have the facts in and figures, we just have to do a quick public advertising, have a meeting on it, but we can make provisions, as we get into the budget season for that, once those figures are known.
Okay.
I would like to jump on that, Mary Jane. I did call the DLGF to find out, kind of difference of where our tax levy is, where our tax levy can be. And actually, there are no restrictions for conservancy districts, 0 restrictions. Now, cities and towns and townships have tax caps and circuit breakers that were imposed in approximately 2006. I'm not an expert on this, but I've dealt with this a lot, being a firefighter, being an ex-fire chief. We submit a Form 1. This is not even the form we submit. We submit a Form 1, and our tax levy is set at $250,000. And that's submitted on a Form 4B. We wanted to increase that tax levy. We could have the treasurer tell Shirley Watkins to increase that tax levy on a Form 4B to whatever number we want. And it has to pass. The DLGF would have to pass it, no restrictions. Rather than raise taxes, that's not a good word to use in the public, but rather than raise taxes, I suggest we go back to the dredging equipment loan proceeds and put the $200,000 back in there. Lowering that to $90,000 might save you 0.001 cent per $100 of taxable profit.
He used to be a math teacher.
So if we put the $200,000 back in loan proceeds, the equipment's breaking down. You heard the manager say the equipment's breaking down. If we want to do what we want to do in 5 years from now, after you come to next week's meeting, we're going to need a triaxle dump truck, we're going to need a backhoe, we're going to need, Malcolm, you know what I'm talking about, and Ron, we're going to need equipment. So we put that back in loan proceeds. We don't have to spend it, but the money is there. We don't need to reappropriate it. The money's there, your tax rate stays approximately the same. Remember what I said, Brown County went down $6 million. Did I tell you what Monroe County did?
No.
Okay, this is, I'm almost done.
That's why you scared me earlier, Matt.
I'm almost done. Brown County in 2014 had $94 million in assessed value. You guys are doing a lot of work in Monroe. I said Brown, I meant Monroe. You guys are doing a lot of work in Monroe County. You went from 2014 with $94 million in assessed value to $120 million in assessed value. Brown County went down $6 million. So you want to keep taxes the same? Put the money in loan proceeds. Have it there. If you want to spend it, you spend it. The board would approve or disapprove, whatever, and you don't raise taxes.
You can have it use your computers.
Wait,
Hang on.
Board, Lance, I think you would know with me on that.
We're just talking about borrowing more money then. I don't like
Just
that.
accessing it.
Having it to access. We don't
Access, we do borrowing money.
It's a
Revenue would have to
It's
come
a
from the
line of
loan.
credit.
Yeah, that would be from the loan. We would borrow money. I would
We haven't
rather.
borrowed money and it's been in the proceeds for the last 2 years and we haven't even used it. It's been there, available to us, still available to us if we run out of dredging money, still available to us to keep digging through November, I think.
I don't like that we keep throwing in there that we, our backup plan is borrow money. That's not a solid backup plan. A more solid backup plan would be have more cash reserves and not spend down to the penny.
You'd rather go to the alternative.
No, I would rather us budget correctly where we end up with a slight excess and then we build up where we have some money in reserves. We don't borrow money, we don't raise taxes. We properly use the money we have, is what I would like to see us do.
Lance is going to.
Well, you know, and again, I think, you know, as a treasurer, I would feel more comfortable knowing what we're borrowing money for, whether it's capital expenditures or things of that nature, really in just an effort for transparency. So I think, you know, in terms, if we get to the situation, we get through, you know, part of the year next year, you know, this plan comes together and we start, you know, looking at some needs and stuff that we have, you know, we could always go through and do, you know, an additional appropriation. It's not too difficult to do. You know, we just go through the process, have appropriate meeting, everybody gets notified, and so it's a lot more, I think, transparent that way, rather than just say, well, we'll have a loan here, and if we need it, we can borrow on it, but we don't know what we're going to use it for.
Just for me, where does that money come from? You know, the appropriation, if we have a special appropriation, where's that money coming from?
It's the tax revenues of the district. I mean,
It's like in our checking account.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Basically, you're setting a budget at X amount.
Okay.
You can't, I mean, the way the state works, you can't exceed that budget. You can't spend more than that.
Right.
But, you know, if you get into a year, you could always request an additional appropriation
We've
to go
got-
beyond that if
we've
you
got
need
it- We've
to.
got it sitting in a checking account, and that's all, I'm just saying, I'm
Yeah.
trying to make that clear, where that money's
Yeah.
actually coming from.
That also takes 2 meetings.
Right. But again, I think
So
it
it's a delay, it's a 60-day delay when you want to appropriate money. It's a meeting to recite the appropriation, then it goes to the newspaper, and then you do it at the next meeting. So it is a delay when you can just put the money in a loan proceeds right now and it does nothing. It sits there just like it did in 15 and 16.
But we had reasons that we thought.
Yeah, we had it identified.
We can put it in equipment if you want to balance the budget. But $200,000 in dredging equipment loan proceeds, and then on the other side of the budget, to make it balanced, you put it in equipment. What is that equipment going to be? Who knows? But that would be a board decision when the time comes.
You know, again, I would feel more comfortable on the transparency, just being able to identify, yeah, I know it may take an extra month, but at least in the effort of transparency with public funds, I would feel better, you know, having an identification what we'd be using that for.
Seems like the big difference here is known versus unknown. We
Right.
knew it was a barge, we
Yeah.
knew it was a push boat, whatever,
Mhm.
or blah, blah. And this, we have a kind of unfortunate timing in that, and I'm sorry I missed your presentation and some of the other things, but I'd like to hear it. I think people want to know, I know I do, if we get KCI in here next Saturday, or anybody, I don't care who it is, and we think, wow, we need to retain these people. Can we come up with money in a timely manner, Lance, so that they're going to walk away if we decide as a board we want to
The answer is yes, because the flip side of that is that we only have one account on our budget. So basically, we have the expense, the income there that we could spend. We're not dictated on what we necessarily spend it on. So, we're very common at the end of the year. We have the reallocation that we go through to kind of balance out the various line items that you see here. The Lake Lemon Conservancy has one account.
Okay.
So we can move money within that account as we need to.
That's my question.
Yeah.
If we find this amazing thing, can we not have to wait until 2018
No.
to employ it?
No.
Does that help at all? Is that enough?
Just want to ask the manager if the $40,000 in disposal site prep is meant for Little Africa.
Yes. I'm actually meeting with Commonwealth on that Monday.
There's not been any discussion that money that for disposal site prep could be used for an engineering study.
Right.
And it's in there.
There you go.
So we could, if we decided,
If we get into it, yeah.
$40,000, we can.
Well, I know, but I wouldn't want to take that out of the site prep. I would want to take it from somewhere else.
Yeah, but we have that flexibility.
Okay.
That's.
I am against lowering the budget, $110,000. I'll just let the board know that. I think it's a mistake. You don't know what the General Assembly is going to do, just like cities and towns and townships didn't know in 2006. And they had to cut their budgets by millions of dollars. The General Assembly can meet this next term and put restrictions on conservancy districts, and then we are screwed if we want to ever try to put that money back in the budget.
Has that ever happened?
It happened in 2006.
Not to conservancies.
It could. Again, I'm not a gambler, so I'm not going to put my money on the General Assembly.
Okay, moving on.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mr.
I'm asking this to know how to direct my question. Was it Adam or you, Lance, that's responsible for putting this together?
We have basically a budget committee. That's myself, Pam, Sue,
My
and then
question
Adam.
has to do with the summary. When I look at the numbers, like 2014 budgeted was $460,000, I think, for revenues. And the actual was about the same. Then last year, for 2015, we budgeted $655,000, but the actual was only $500,000. Now, obviously, we don't know the actuals from this year, and next year is kind of somewhere in between. But can you just explain to me why we've got such a huge difference between in 2015?
It's the loan.
It's the loan.
It's a loan. We paid cash for the bar.
We had the money to pay cash, so we didn't borrow the money.
So when you get that revenue, you take out the loan, it comes in as a one lump sum, that's the revenue.
Yeah, from a budget standpoint, yes. Yeah. That's good.
Now, I got one more.
Okay, hold on, Barb. He's got one other quick
One more
one.
comment. I think most of what people here are concerned about, and most of what you spend your time on, is weed control and dredging. I would like to see that broke out. It doesn't have to be part of the official budget, because I know you've got a legal format. But it'd be a lot easier for me as a freeholder if you could put together some kind of a summary report on how much we're spending on dredging. Because I go through here line by line, and I try to add it up, and one time I did that in a meeting, and I presented it, and that's when Bob was manager, and he goes, well now, but some of that's used for this, and some of that's used for that, and it's not really, it's hard for the average person to dig it out of here.
And I think they do that at the end, at the end of the year. We do get a summary of what was used for dredging and all that. So that is done on an annual basis.
It is done annually, you're right.
There's a whole breakdown.
In the Feb meeting.
Yeah.
Feb meeting.
And is that online?
Yeah. Barb.
I wanted to go back to, I tried to get his attention, or somebody's attention, to what you were saying about the council and the districts, the Conservancy, how they're affecting? I didn't get what you said.
So I think she's asking about the tax base changing and affecting our.
You just said they could, the governing agency could affect our Conservancy. I mean, I didn't understand.
The General Assembly or the Legislature?
Yeah.
Okay, in 2006, they passed a bill that created tax caps and circuit breakers, 1%, only a 1% cap on property tax in Marion County only in Marion County. And that was in 2006. That affected 9 townships. It affected the city of Indianapolis, it affected Speedway and Beech Grove. What they did, the reason they did that, one of the reasons they did that was to combine government facilities, to merge departments, IMPD, IFD, etc.
My question is this, it doesn't make any I think, it doesn't make any difference what the tax cap is, because in Monroe County, Judy Sharp keeps on reassessing our property values, the assessment, every year, and every year it goes up.
I said that. It went up $26 million.
So, but how, given that, how would the tax cap that you're talking about affect our Conservancy?
He's
Because
worried
our assessed
that we'll never be
valuations are
able to
going
raise
up.
taxes if they were to pass legislation that would cap it.
It's a worst case scenario.
He's worried that they would pass legislation that would not allow us to raise taxes.
Take away our restrictions.
Take away our restrictions.
Give us the option
But I don't believe there's anything that they're proposed right now anyway, so.
Doesn't the state, whatever the tax rate, the state, the overall state approves what our tax rate is?
Well, we basically submit in a levy. So basically, we go in and we say we want $250,000.
Right.
And then based on like what Mike's saying, the assessed values and such, they go in and they determine what the tax rate needs to be to get us to that point. So we've always kept our levy the same at $250 for the last quite a few years. But obviously, you know, people's taxes could vary depending on what assessed values do and things of that nature.
And I'm only talking about Conservancy tax. I'm not talking about public
Right.
safety.
But isn't the Conservancy tax based on the assessed valuation?
Yes.
of
It
the
is.
house?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's the same in both counties. It's the same.
No.
No, it's not.
The tax is the same in both counties.
The tax rate.
The tax rate.
Yeah.
That confuses the heck out of everybody. The
Yeah.
tax rate is the same across both counties. But if you have a $100,000 house and he has a $600,000 house,
We're going to pay more.
yeah, you pay more.
It's .2157, $100 of taxable property in both counties, the rate.
And
Right in
basically,
front of me, you're welcome to look at it.
and that's something, like I said, we go in, we set our levy, and then based on the assessed valuations that come in, they determine that rate. We had couple questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. It just came to mind when you mentioned $40,000 for Prep of Little Africa.
Yeah.
One of our neighbors is a builder and stopped in this morning because he wanted to come to the meeting and couldn't, had to work.
Okay.
And he mentioned that in 69, there's going to be a huge need for dirt when they're building 69. And his thought was, well, why don't we contract with a company to take that dirt out of here? We're going to have Prep Little Africa and we'd also make some money. The roads may be a problem, there may be other contingencies that would make it not work, so that's why we'll bring that up, and that sparks any thoughts with anybody.
Yeah, because we're reaching out.
We did talk to some of the companies that were consulting with I-69 that came out with soil testing, and it wasn't enough play, it wasn't compactable enough, and the other thing was the cost, so we did.
Did you talk to Kreider by any chance?
I'm not sure who was out, might have been, I'm not positive who was out, but they have certain requirements that they have to use for compacting dirt, and it came out and it wasn't enough play, and it wasn't really compacted. And that's the biggest thing we run into is that we're so far off in town. I'm just about, I actually was talking with Kenny Clark, the owner of our other disposal site. He actually said his daughter might have some land. We've been kind of tossing around, we'll be able to get rid of a lot of the dirt from our current disposal site.
Keep it open, yeah.
Land. But we broached that conversation too to see if maybe we couldn't do a wintertime project and try to get rid of a lot on the site.
But yeah, you raised another good point why we need to study, because the other issue we have is we're running out of space, you know, where to put this stuff. So Any other questions? Yes, I'm ready, sir.
It's not really a question, I guess I need clarification.
Mhm.
If I understood what you said, if we need more money next year, we have to go through the appropriation process.
Correct.
It's going to take 60 days, which is prime time out of the season, because we won't know we need it until we're in the season and we have a problem. So I would suggest the board at least consider going back to this loan and put in a number, and for your comfort, you flag that it's for to pay off the appropriation in advance, because we're going to vote for it, because the lake is dying. And I can't imagine a good conscience, we won't say, yes, let's do this, if you've got a plan and it makes sense. But now, we don't lose 60 days of prime time.
And again, let me kind of address those concerns. I think they're valid concerns, but with the reason you need the additional appropriation if you spend over what you budgeted. And so on that time frame, we're going to have plenty of lead time of knowing that, hey, we're going to be approaching that limit and that we need to do this. Within that time frame, we basically only have one budget account. So kind of as was mentioned, if we decide, okay, we're going to get this consultant, for example, and we need to defer funds, we have the ability to move money around within our budget, without going through that whole process. So, we can react pretty quickly, to meet a need if a need arises and the board feels that it needs to be a priority.
I think we hope to get this information and
early,
and a quote and everything during the winter season where we won't be doing any dredging.
Right.
So that we're ready to go for the next
Yeah.
season. Or restart the process for the next season.
But that's kind of in the governmental, that's the thing that's really difficult is it's kind of the chicken or the egg because it's hard to know what your expenses are going to be. So you have to kind of project the best that you can. And, I do think that we do have plenty of maneuverability, if, we do need, have needs that come up to be able to address those needs quickly.
Here's the last thing I'll say, and I wish I would have come up with this. I didn't come up with it. Somebody smarter than me came up with it. But last year we budgeted $720,000, and that's not doing it. For next year, we're budgeting $635,000. And do we think that's going to do it? I don't think $820,000 is going to do it. Well, we're going backwards. And so if $720,000 didn't do it, who the hell thinks $635,000 is going to do it?
Well, if I could address that concern too, I mean, realistically, what's getting inflated in the budget's capital expenditures. Our operating expense on what we're doing to kind of keep the lake running has really remained pretty steady. That income's, and revenue and expense items are pretty level from year to year. Kind of what's fluctuating in this budget is capital expenditures, the loan proceeds. So it's, even though we're saying $700,000, we're really not putting that amount of money in the lake. We're generally about a $500,000 budget every year. It's just the equipment needs, and we have to basically allocate for that.
Putting money in the budget to take out a loan doesn't mean we have more money. We have to pay that money back. So it doesn't work long term just to budget for a giant loan. I mean, that's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. That's not good sense.
It's an alternative to raising taxes. It's an alternative to raising the tax levy. That's my point.
I don't see how you want to borrow money.
I didn't say we didn't have to spend the money. We hadn't spent it in the last 2 years. I said put the money there. That way we don't have to appropriate. The money is there. And we save 60 days.
What's the process for doing like special assessments? I mean, there's talk of like a cumulative fund, which is kind of what we're talking about, is having this contingency fund that's in the original plan. And we know where we're headed. We know we're headed there. We don't know when we're headed there. We don't know what the cost is. But shouldn't we be trying to beef that up and have money there as we're going along? As well as that maybe we may still have to do a bond, float a bond anyway, if that ends up being what we're doing. And you're saying you're opposed to increasing taxes. I think probably most of us would not be adverse to that. To get a money put into a cumulative fund that's sitting there for the purpose that we got. We got the seaweed problem. We have the dredger. We know those are two targets that we're going to have that money for. Why aren't we starting to build money up at this point as opposed to having to look backwards and try to grab the money?
It really kind of comes into, and I think, again, I go back to the chicken or the egg scenario. We know there's a lot of needs out there. We know we have a lot of priorities forthcoming, but we really haven't quantified yet, what those needs are going to be. So I think, we have to kind of get that figured down, get these studies done, and kind of have an understanding of what this cost is going to be so that we can budget around it. Again, with the way the budgeting process works in the state, we have to stay underneath that budget. We can move money around there as we need to. And then again, with the appropriation process, at least at that time, we've identified the cost, we know what we're spending the money on. And, it's a lot more, transparent that way. So I think, we do have the ability to react quickly, and, we can still extend the budget as we need to.
I can't remember the name of the gentleman who did the proposal last week.
Right.
Didn't he give us figures last week or the last meeting saying?
They were raw figures. I mean, there was like, it could be as little as this much, and it could be as much as
But wouldn't that be kind of a guideline?
They were very, very close after speaking with KCI. Very, very close.
That was just the study. That wasn't the costs of what we ourselves should do.
But that would be that initial cost. I think he did give some figures go beyond that initial. I mean, there is something out there.
Yes.
And we wouldn't need to do an additional appropriation until, the end of the year, when we know what we'll budget.
When we know what our budget is.
$50,000, like, hey, it's $50,000 for this contract, we can go ahead and spend that money, and then as we're approaching our maximum expenditures, we'll have something more, because then we can come in and then try to raise the cap. It's not like if they come in and like, oh, we're going to spend budget of $50,000, we can't spend it, we have to do the appropriation now. We can spend that money, and then as we approach the cap of our spending, then use the appropriation.
Can the tax rate be changed like midterm, like we pay spring tax in fall, or once it's set, it's set for that entire tax year?
It's set for the entire tax year. But I think, getting into that, that's really, when you start talking tax rates and stuff, that's really where you have to have the data and, know what you're spending the money on. And so we have to get to that point. I think we're all in agreement that we're getting there and we got to take steps, but, there's just a certain amount of steps that we have to take before we get to that point. Any other questions on the revenue side?
I do have one.
Okay.
So, what did you appropriate this year? I ask this every year, but then you say, oh, it's too late to talk about it. So what have you appropriated for riprap? Since my thought is, when you drive along and you see all the sediment falling in off the banks, it's easier to prevent it from coming in than it is to dredge it out. But you always say that you have...
Yeah, we have 15,000 allocated for riprap this year.
So how long do you think, how long of an area do you think that will?
Have
that will include private dredging as well.
Say it again.
I say $5,000 worth of riprap is probably going to give you 1,000 feet.
Yeah, probably.
So what did you say was the private dredging? I'm sorry.
Well, if you look at line 4130, dredging / riprap income, we're 15,000. So we can obviously overspend that as much as we want. But yeah, I mean, we did.
But you said private dredging? Is that what you said?
Yeah, proceeds from private dredging or private riprap would go into riprap that is done.
Okay, but that shouldn't come, if it's private, it shouldn't come out of our budget, should it?
Well, yeah. It's coming out of our budget.
That's,
we get it back.
yeah, see, and that's the thing that is interesting about the state, you got a budget for it. So even though, we may have somebody over here says, I want to do $10,000 worth of riprap, if I go out and spend more than budget, I still got to do an additional appropriation for that.
So the Conservancy is putting 15,000
Yeah.
in to
Yeah.
do their own riprap?
Yeah.
Do you have areas that you planned for that?
A lot of the areas that we've hit or can't hit right now is just due to water depth, or the areas are extremely steep, and to the point where you have to dump, loads and loads and loads into the lake in order to just get it up to the shoreline.
But right now, with the small dredging, when we start dredging in the shallow, doing riprap on the shallow.
The small barge is going to grab the same amount as the big guy, so you're going to have the same limitations as far as water depth.
So do you have any idea where you're going to do the riprap?
There's a decent amount of private work, and we like to do private work, then the freeholder is working over the cost, and then, it's cost neutral to us. There are a couple areas that Adam and I looked at, that could be done, that's, doesn't have any, city property that doesn't have any homes or docks around it.
That would be great, yeah.
In the interest of time.
Yeah, one more question from Marty.
We've had a lot of discussion about the fact that we don't have enough money to really do what we need to do on the lake. There's been
discussion about tax increases and borrowing money. Has the board considered opportunities to raise revenue through things like a gas pump, dock rental, campground, marriage gazebo, product sales? I mean, it seems to me that there's streams of revenue that could be captured that would both be a benefit to the lake and offset the need to raise taxes, something that we looked at early on when I was on the board for 12 years. And it seems to me that there's a win-win situation. I'm sure that if we had the gas pump down here, a lot of efficient people would use it. And I don't know if that would be 10,000 or 50,000, but that's a benefit to the freeholders. Doesn't really hurt the use of the park. Is basically money from heaven where we don't have to raise taxes. And it seems to me before my opinion is we can hire a consultant and they're not going to come up with anything that hasn't been thought of. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I'd like to answer that.
But before we raise taxes, can we just look at getting some revenue that's already available that would actually benefit us on top of the revenue?
Thank you.
We're having trouble hiring a backup excavator. Do you think we're going to get a gas pump operator? Or a campground attendant?
I've gone up to John Shuttlecock and bought gas at 3 o'clock in the morning with my credit card. There's nobody there. I don't think you need an operator, right?
Yeah, you do. That's why we relocated to the marina.
So you have a person there 24/7?
Yeah.
Is that a requirement?
Yeah, it's a law. State law.
You know, there's, I just think there's streams of revenue that we're not capturing.
But we have to have people in place to run the campground and to run the gas pumps, and we can't even get backup operators.
I'll comment.
People make money doing it. I mean, somebody makes money.
I don't disagree with you, but we're just trying to get a backup operator to finish the dredging, and it's like pulling teeth. So you think we're ready to open up a campground and operate a gas pump?
All I would ask is look into it before you raise my taxes. That's all I'm asking.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good point.
Very good point.
Self-service. No, you gotta have a guy there 24 hours.
Andy, did you have
Real quick, Andy.
I didn't know the mic was on.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple things on other forms of revenue we're getting off, we do need to talk about the budget, but real quick, a couple things on other forms of revenue. One, the margins on fuel sales are tiny, aren't they, John? I mean, my family owns 14 gas stations at one time. You don't make your money in fuel. You make it on everything else. Fuel pumps would be a horrible endeavor for the conservancy. Second, we aren't good at the forms of revenue that we have. We have a park that has done nothing but lose facilities over the years, and now we're talking about adding forms of revenue. We need to get good at what we have now before we ever look at doing other stuff. We have no grills in the park. We have no fire pits. We have bathrooms that in the 90s, when the city got rid of the park, they said that they needed to be remodeled, and we haven't done much with them since then. I mean, we have to fix what we have and then build upon that. We can't just start other stuff when we're good at what we're doing now. So that's, maybe if we had everything else running like a top, and everything's clean and perfect, and everything with the park is wonderful, we might look into adding some other things. But we need to get back to the basic infrastructure of this park, build on that, and then go forward.
Okay, good point. In a kind of an effort of time, probably a good point to kind of move on. I think those are all good points that we will, look into as well. Kind of going into the expense side, salary and benefits. Again, just kind of budgeting normal cost of living increases there. So no real significant changes over the last budget. Going down to the hourly and seasonal type thing. Again, budgeting based upon hours, no real major changes in terms of payroll and hourly rate there. So again, open up any quick questions from the board on the salary and wage standpoint. Okay, with that, is there any questions? What's that?
Looks great.
All right. Any other questions from committee?
Real fast, you're not increasing the dredging budget next year?
No, it's staying flat.
Same hours?
Yeah, same hours budgeted as this year, that's correct. Moving on to supplies, again, office supplies, no real major changes there, similar to last year. We are budgeting pretty much the same for fuel, kind of fuel cost of health study. And again, basically budgeting a little bit more for riprap, about $5,000 more to answer the question there. Dredging supplies will remain the same. And again, nautical markers and such, we budget pretty much similar for that every year to purchase some new ones.
Can we put something in janitorial since we all agree that it needs to be done even if it's at the manager's discretion? I think having nothing in that is...
We did.
Okay, it says nothing.
It's other professional services.
Oh, okay.
Good point.
Sorry, I missed that somewhere.
Any other questions on supplies?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Under uniforms, are we providing hard hats for the operators?
No.
Because under OSHA, there's 38-page brochure on OSHA's website that states dredgers are supposed to have hard hats.
Okay.
And I believe around hydraulics, you're supposed to have long sleeve shirts and eye protection. Needs to be made available.
We have one in the dually, Levi, and there is one in the push boat.
Yeah, and OSHA raised
If OSHA
that.
showed up, it's $25,000 fine.
Yeah.
I don't think our insurance covers those fines.
No.
That would be right out.
And then OSHA doubled their fines basically this year, so.
Yes.
Yeah. Good point. Any other questions on supplies? Okay, moving on. Getting a little damp here. Couple things on professional services. Again, the main thing there is grass mowing did drop down. Obviously, we did an RFP this year, got a couple years on that, so that's fixed in through next year. But attorney's fees, county fees are all remaining to be the same. We did budget an additional $4,000 for a fish survey. We did one several years ago. I know we've had a lot of activity on the fishery this past year, so we did just put a little bit of money in there to do that if need be. And did allow for other professional services as well. Communication, no real major changes there, just very similar to previous years. Again, printing, advertising, we're starting to get away from that a little bit, but we did put a little bit of a budget in there. And then we are anticipating that insurance and whatnot will remain pretty flat as compared to this year as well. And utilities, again, looking pretty similar on that. We did budget a little bit more for electric as we're anticipating some increases there. But overall, no real major changes from previous on, the service side. And certainly any questions from the board?
Did I hear wind, and I think we talked about this a bit, that potentially DNR could help us with that fish survey, and we might not have to spend that?
Yeah, I spoke with Dave Pataka this week, and we are on the list to potentially have a fish survey done in 2020. He says we are classified as a semi-private lake because we only have one public boat ramp. There's not a lot of access points, so that's why we're categorized into that. He says they're talking about not doing us do these semi-private lakes, so he can't guarantee when or when not, we may get done. We'll keep you posted on that. But I think it'd be good to have it in the budget. Next year we'll talk to him and kind of get an idea. Maybe, 3 hours down, if they do us in 2020, that'd be 3 years later. So maybe we do ours now and then DNR would cover the cost of 2020.
Thank you.
Any other questions there? Okay, moving on next to repair and maintenance. Did kind of want to bring some things up on that. We did a lot, some repair and maintenance monies for the grounds here at 5,500. Again, boat repairs, winterizations and stuff, do about 2,000 there. And then about $1,000 just for the regular truck maintenance and things of that nature. The one major increase that we're doing in 2017 is dredging equipment repairs. The big barge is getting old, and we have some issues that have come up this year. We've had some issues we had to deal with immediately, but there are some things going on with the hydraulics, both with the truck, articulated truck, in addition to the excavator itself. We do have some weaknesses showing up on the barge, the big barge, in terms of the metal and such. So we did kind of get some estimates on cost on that, and did allocate some monies to do some of that next year. So that's why that's at $25,000. Outside of that, weed treatment, we kind of projected that to be about $40,000 this year. Most of the other type of expenses are pretty similar, but we did a lot, about $40,000 for disposal site preparation, and that would be Little Africa, you know, if we do decide to go that route as well. Outside of that, no real major changes. You know, the debt service did get knocked down with the loan proceeds kind of going down, but everything else is pretty similar on, you know, the repairs and maintenance and other services and charges. So, again, open that up for any board questions right now. Any questions?
Yeah, I want to apologize, I want to jump back a couple of categories. Has anybody approached the city of Bloomington about paying for riprap on city of Bloomington property? Because it seems to us that a lot of that is eroding. Is that correct?
A lot of it is, but that actually was part of our agreement.
Is that right?
Yeah, when we took over and formed the Conservancy, that, you know, we agreed to maintain it. So the city kind of walked away from it initially and said, you know, we don't want anything to do with it.
Just for clarification, in 2016, you budgeted $46,000 for debt service, but my understanding is you didn't actually use the $200,000 loan that
Correct.
was in a line item as revenue, so then you also did not spend this $46,000.
The previous year, that's correct, yeah.
So, okay, so that's just in there as a potential.
Yeah, when we budgeted, we felt that we were going to have to take out a loan to purchase a small barge, so we did
So you
budget.
budgeted the loan.
We budgeted the loan.
But neither of those occurred.
That's correct.
Okay, and so the $21,000 is the potential of the $90,000 loan in
Yeah.
the revenue section?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just one.
Very good. Yes, Barb?
This goes back a little bit on rental equipment.
Mm-hmm.
I see that 2016 budget was $1,000 and it's $2,000 for 2017. Well, if we're renting the excavator, the small excavator, the $1,000 isn't going to be enough to cover the rental of that. And
Our anticipation.
So what's going to, going into 2017, or will we sending it back?
Well, our anticipation is we'll purchase it.
I'm sorry?
Our anticipation is that we're going to buy it. Our main thing right now is we basically rented it to just make sure it was the right size and use this year. So we're kind of giving it a trial run, so to speak. And that's the $90,000 that's budgeted for the loan. That's actually what that's for, is to purchase the excavator.
All right.
Good question. Any other questions? Okay. And still having difficulty turning pages. And basically on capital expenditures, again, this is some equipment needs and stuff that we feel we'll need to have next year. No changes over the previous budget from last month. But again, we're allotting about a couple $1,000s for new computer equipment. We do have some aging computers in the office. We are, allocating spending $90,000 for the excavator next year. And then we are allocating about $10,000 to replace the pontoon boat. That thing's seen its better years. And so we're going to start to kind of look to see if we can find a good used pontoon kind of workboat to use for the buoys and things of that nature. So, overall we're anticipating capital expenditures about $102,000 next year. So definitely open that up for any questions. And so with that, it kind of finishes the presentation for the budget. Again, basically it will go out for advertisement here at the 1st of September, if I'm correct, Adam. And then we'll have our final reading, which will be basically the formal passing of the budget. We'll have the final reading in September, but it's basically set in stone there. And then the passing of the budget will be at the October board meeting. So, again, thank you for all your comments.
Thanks for your patience. We really had to kind of do the hard work of this meeting just to some unforeseen circumstances. Thanks, Lance. All right, public comment. Hi, Cynthia.
I'll make this quick. First of all, thank you so much for making headway and making a decision about moving forward with the dredging and covering the dredging time available, which is really precious on this lake. Adam, would I be correct that there's a log somewhere that says what date dredging was done, how many hours, how much is taken out, in what location?
Yeah.
It just seems like in terms of accountability and transparency, this might have been a less needed, somebody might not have walked out. If we all would have known that, if the board would have been informed what days it wasn't, if you had facts to work with, maybe it would facilitate and alleviate some frustration on our part. If there were more transparency, then we could all have the same conversation about, understand there was an equipment problem this day, and that's why it didn't show up. What are we gonna do about it? And it just seems like, because because most of us are probably here, I know the whole lake is the important issue, but most of us that come month after month, I believe have dredging issues and concerns. It's a hot topic, and it just seems to have that transparency and information readily available would facilitate some sane discussion and some decision making that wouldn't be so painful. That's my input.
We've been working on that, to your point. And if you do much on the website, Adam did just add the total cubic yards dredged up to date. You can always call the office and ask. I had some different opinions about maybe putting more information on, and so we're kind of in discussion about that. But at this point, we are making some steps in that direction. I couldn't agree with you more.
So the logs could become public record.
Pardon me?
Yeah, you can call the office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure, Michael.
Just to follow up, Adam, on Cynthia's comment earlier about utilizing the silt out of the lake for I-69. Tom Stevens is the builder on the lake and been around for a long time, knows a lot of folks. Mentioned Kreider, and he's talking about the millions of cubic yards of not just fill dirt they're needing, but the topsoil that they're needing as they do this project. And so, Tom Stevens. So if you have to contact him, he said, give you his name.
He also be a great source and equipment operator. He knows a lot of people in my
Yes, Barbara.
I'd just like to know why we are allotting less money for weed treatment.
I'm sorry.
Why are we allotting, I think it's $10,000 less for weed treatment next year?
Well, we're looking at historical. Over the last several years, we haven't had to allot the full 50,000. That's one reason. The other reason is we have to try to balance the budget a little bit. So we've got all these different needs coming in and only so much income. And so we have to kind of balance it out that way.
There are weeds, I've been out on the lake a couple of times, weeds where there haven't been weeds, so I presume the area hasn't been treated, so.
Well, as per the first discussion, we have not treated as many at manager discretion, so it may go up, Barb. That's a concern I have, that we haven't budgeted enough for next year if we're going to go back to these to these lines that we've been talking about. So that's a good point.
Will we have the money to be able to spend more than $40,000 next year?
We need to, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the way the budgeting process works, we have to kind of get something in right now to get approved for the budget. But we do have some leeway as we get into the year to move money around from these different line items as they're needed.
Anybody else? Spencer?
How much do we spend on the small barge?
Grand total?
It's about $150,000 to purchase it, and then the rental, all the hydraulic fluid and all the moving out, it's probably about $6,000 there now. It's about $156 in.
And then to get it in the water and everything, how much we got?
It was
$2,000 for the crane.
$2,000 for the cranes, about $1,500 for shipping.
So we're at, okay, 160. You're saying if we buy that, there's another 90.
Yeah, so you're about
$50,000. How many freeholders? 500 and some.
520.
So we're looking at $300 to $400 per freeholder that we spend on the small barge. My question for my representative, Sue, what benefit does anybody in your district get from the barge, that small barge?
Nothing right now, and that's not even
Exactly.
working. It's not even working right
Okay,
now.
but it
But
works.
eventually, if we want to, we can have private dredging done with it. But the value of the dredging in the value of the small barge for our district is the use of the entire lake. That is my
I
philosophy.
agree with you on that point, because anything that the small barge can do to help the whole lake, a big barge can do better for less money. And including the dredging in our district.
But we're a community, so
We
if
are a
we're using the
community, I
small
understand.
barge for other areas in the lake, then we are working as a community. That's my philosophy.
We are a community, but I want to see the lake saved, and people in my district were spending money to save the lake. You've been dredging since what, 2006, Bob? Not one scoop of mud's been taken out of the middle of the lake. It's all been for channel access.
No, I mean.
That's not true. That's not true.
The philosophy is that I don't have any children in school, but I'm paying taxes for education.
I
mean, it's the
understand, and we all
same
benefit
thing.
from being in an educated society.
Right.
My point is, as far as saving the lake, that's not the priority. The priority has been channel access since the day we started.
Boating safety is also part of it as well.
You know, she's broken it off.
And that's where in 208, in your area, we did attempt some
Look,
dredging.
I'm not saying
Didn't go
we
well.
made the wrong decision on dredging these channels, okay? Don't get me wrong there. I understand that we have to provide access, like Mike pointed out, that's part of our requirements. I understand that, but my frustration is, I hear people talking about raising taxes and everything. And, well, I'm gonna go back to a few months ago, you had a proposal for a private company to come in and hydraulically dredge Chitwood. And then the board asked the committee to go back and look at the numbers compared to private dredging versus buying a small barge and tell us the difference. The committee come back and didn't meet. They didn't do anything about it. Andy and Lance looked at the numbers and they both agreed that using the private dredge was more financially sound. So the only two people that looked at the numbers said it's better to use private dredging. And oh, by the way, you probably would have dredging going on in your area right now if they would have gone that way.
Spencer, I looked at those numbers too, and there are a lot more things to be considered. You're going down roads that we've been down, and I don't think this is.
I got
This is
one.
public
I got
comment.
one.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So in my